Time for the weekly outlook. Um, Last week was pretty uneventful. A little bit of info from last week, but mostly range bound. Right after we made this big leg up off of some support, more so on NQ, at least in my opinion, than ES. We took out these lows. Right, we caught the traversal of value here. It got a little tricky up here once we started to overlap value and have a couple sessions just like completely overlapping. Not necessarily inside days, but very close to inside days. Really, most of the value was overlapping with the prior week's Wednesday, Thursday, half session Thursday, and half session Fridays range. So that's where most of last week's value sits before we started to inch higher, attempt to break out and back test, and we'll see that all in the TPO. But NQ had some relative strength early on in the week and sort of continued with that strength. Yes, it started to deviate away from value, but continued to overlap the subsequent sessions and then attempted to break out Friday. So main question for this week is, or at least for me, is what do we do up against last week's value, in which case most of it sits up here within Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday's range. It's a little more on ES. I think we had like 4 or 5 sessions that like completely overlapped. But that's gonna be the focus. Are we going to be above it, stay above it, and continue this fresh leg up off of this, or does this fade back into value? Maybe take out some of these weaker lows. Not necessarily poor. Some of them are close to being poor lows, but do we, take out some of those poor lows, weak lows, perhaps maybe backfill some of this imbalance before, kind of think about what to do next. Gives us like a better back test of some of this value back here. So, going into the TPO, right? You see that. So we have Wednesday, the prior week's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday here, and then we open up Monday here, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So Friday was the day we really broke out. You can sort of see these lows kind of stacked together here, but most of your value was overlapping. Just tried inching higher here. Personally, I didn't have a great week. I was short biased, especially after this Thursday that gapped above all of this stuff, traded back into value, and had issues staying back above it. So I was kind of short biased that night, kind of screwed me over going into Friday. But I broke out Friday, a kind of a weak one, which is sort of the issue I'm having again this week. Is right, you open above value, you get a drive that fails, trades back, the retests hold. Right, the upper end of this multi-day balance you have here, the upper end of it holds. You don't necessarily get the reaction you'd love to see as a buyer. So we'll have to see what we do. I'm kind of disregarding what we're doing tonight, Sunday night. I would really love to see what we do up against these highs here or these lows come RTH on Monday. I think that's gonna be the first thing I look for on Mondays. What do we do up against that? If we are below Friday's lows and accepting below back into value, I think it becomes a pretty easy, quick move back down the lower end. And in that case, like, you may as well go for these weak lows, right? Maybe go back to some of this poor structure back here. But the instant we trade back below Friday's lows, unless it gets reclaimed instantly, where I can get longer to reclaim, this does not look good for buyers. With Friday's TPO merged, I mean, it just looks like a classic balanced profile, perfectly balanced profile, right? Obviously, you continue the pattern of higher lows, but in my opinion, it's pretty darn weak. Same thing you got going on NQ. Right, drive higher on Friday, break out, back test it, back test it, back test it. You don't really go anywhere. So would really like to see what we do RTH on Monday. It is also a FOMC week, so I doubt we're gonna go anywhere too far away prior to that happening. But yeah, pretty simple in terms of levels. Ideas, I think it just comes down to execution at this point. Can we execute properly on this idea and not be biased? Like, I might be coming in a little too biased just looking at these profiles and just seeing how perfectly balanced they are. But we'll just have to play day to day, and just see where price wants to go and take us. Upside level is pretty darn clear. We still have like a multi-day balance up here, where we have some levels from. Same thing on ES, and of course some levels down here on NQ. Longer term, my line in the sand's like slightly lower than where we're currently trading. It's not that much lower. On ES, it's about anything down in this range where sellers can't get a break and follow through, or somewhere down here, I think is where I want to really get involved as a buyer. Or on NQ somewhere down here, possibly down into this, right? So, maybe go back to some of these more pivotal, at least in the past, these pivotal areas. Okay. So those are like my ideal dip buy areas. Don't know if we'll get them. We'll see what happens Monday. Right? It's really what I really want to see up against these two levels, really. All right. Pretty simple. Gold, there was one place specifically I was looking at for gold. Multi-day, multi-week balance here, really, since the roll gap. Mostly overlapping these last 2 weeks. On Friday, you traded back up to the upper end of that, faded. Now I'm kind of looking for that traversal all the way down. Yeah, I guess you could say we already did sort of traverse value, right? Got pretty close to that shelf down there, the lowermost shelf, but I really wanted to see like down into the 4170s or even down into the 4160s for a better dip buy, right? If sellers can't get that continued breakdown for a big swing back up to these highs and maybe some. Okay, that's the one play I'm looking at on gold. Otherwise, just stay away from it. So I think that's the plan for this week, and we'll leave it at that.